I don't think anyone wants to live in a situation when they're wondering when a bill or a notice is going to land on their doorstep or in their inbox that tells them that costs have gone up yet again, and they just don't know when to expect that. They don't know how much it's going to be. Well, right now in this climate of unaffordability for housing, essentially we have renters living that way, and we also have homeowners living that way. And what we're arguing here as the Green Party and me running to be your MLA is this is not fair. For renters, they are wondering how much their rent is going to go up. There is no rent cap. This is part 3 of Live for 5. So if you're wondering where I'm coming from, watch the other 2 parts to get kind of the lay of the land on where I'm coming from and where I'm going here. But basically, now renters can have their rent increased up to 4.7% before they can apply for any sort of relief. And that means, again, they have to apply. The onus is on the renter when their rent goes up to show that they can't make the payments or they'd like some kind of relief. What we are saying here is that is not fair. And the onus should be placed, I believe it's more fair to put that onus on the landlord who is raising the rent. What if that percentage, that 4 point, let's say a landlord wanted to raise the rent 4.7 or 5%, wouldn't it make more sense for them to have to apply to be approved to raise the rent on that tenant? That seems a lot more fair. Other provinces have a rent cap, and that is important, and that's what we want to integrate here, so renters don't live in fear of their rent being raised by any amount. Now, I want to focus a little bit more today on landowners and landlords. We also don't think it's fair for anybody who owns property, any homeowner, to receive a tax bill that raises their property tax based on however their property was assessed. Right now, if you're a homeowner, I'm a homeowner. You get the bill, the assessment in the mail, the assessment that your property has gone up, of course, and then your taxes are raised based on that. How are those assessments made? They are tied to the real estate market. Again, this is the problem of making housing a commodity. That means seniors, people living on a fixed income, they get a notice that their property tax is increasing based on an assessment. They didn't do anything to their property, they didn't renovate it, maybe. It's just based on what other properties around them are selling at. That is also not fair because it's a surprise, again, a cost of living. And what we are seeing here is these property taxes are going up, say, 8, 9, 10%. What we would like to see as the Green Party, what we think is more fair, is that property taxes are raised basically instead of pegged to the real estate market, they are pegged to inflation. So, of course, things go up over time, but what if property taxes were tied to inflation and maybe even adding a point on that, something that the homeowner could predict based on inflation how much their taxes are going to go up. So if inflation is 2.5 this year, the property tax, say, would go up 2.5% over last year, not 8%, 10%, something like that, based on the real estate market. I don't ever plan on selling my home. My wife and I talk about it. We're going to die in our house. We're going to live here forever. Our house is not a commodity. It's not an asset. It's not something that we want to flip or sell for a profit. It is our home. And that's what the Green Party is about, is saying homes are where people live. We need more housing supply, but also housing prices can't be raised in a runaway sense where people can afford to live in that, but they also live in dread of property tax bills arriving on their doorstep that are more than they can pay. Again, seniors, people on a fixed income, that is a real problem. And then, of course, when that gets passed down to tenants, they get a huge property tax raise, a rent increase. And we just think it's more fair if the landlords have to apply to raise the rent if it is above the price of inflation. So, for example, projections for inflation right now are 2.5% for next year. So, what happens when a landlord decides to raise the rent 4.7% or more? Well, essentially, the tenant is being handed an increase in their cost of living and their cost of housing, twice the amount of inflation. That's not fair. So the Greens and as your MLA, we will work always to make sure things are fair for renters and for landlords and homeowners and property owners. It is important to have it both ways. There's no bad guy in that equation. I am at my 5 minutes, which means I didn't even get to talk about social and community housing, which is an important third thing that we believe the government should be working tirelessly toward. So, tomorrow I would like to talk about waiting lists, things in our communities that are maybe developing or not developing. And I want to be the kind of MLA in our riding that is constantly unsatisfied with unaffordable housing and a lack of development, a lack of action that the government can do to be moving affordability forward. That is exactly what we need, and it's what I'll be working for. Again, that's target one of my 5 target priorities for when I'm your MLA. Join me tomorrow. We'll talk more for part 4, possibly the last part, about housing affordability. And this is just our number one target out of 5 things we are targeting in the next 4 years when I am your MLA. Thanks for listening. We're learning together.